Fukushima, an original audio drama series from the BBC World Service, telling the story of the 2011 disaster at Japan's Fukushima nuclear power plant.
There is no greater threat we face at this time than the one unfolding in Fukushima Daiichi.
Search for Fukushima wherever you get your BBC podcasts.
Thanks for choosing to listen to Assignment on the documentary podcast from the BBC World Service. I'm Caroline Bailey, and in this episode I'm reporting from Germany, where I'm finding out how climate change is threatening the country's forests. 4 out of 5 trees in Germany are showing signs of damage, with 35% in a serious state or dead. I want to know what's being done to save Germany's trees, and the programme begins in one of the worst affected areas, the Harz Mountains. Oh yes, there's the Brocken, the highest mountain, just over to our left.
And now you are on 971 meters.
Right.
Yes, it's also one of the biggest mountain here in the Harz.
All these trees are dead in front of us.
Yeah, all these trees.
And when do you think they died?
In the last 5 years, from 2018, and they died next year's too. But this is all dead.
And then if we look to the hillside beyond, there's barely any green at all. It's all spookily grey, dead trees.
Yeah, it's a little bit like a horror film.
Welcome to the documentary from the BBC World Service. I'm Caroline Bailey, and on assignment I'm in Germany to find out how climate change is threatening the country's forests. I've come right up into the Harz Mountains with Andreas Mehling, who's head of the tourist office in the nearby town of Wernigerode in northern Germany. And until just a few years ago, the view from where we're standing would have been quite different. Mountainsides thickly covered with spruce trees, but not anymore. Germany's spruce forests are dying from drought and the devastating bark beetle, which attacks when the trees become too weak from lack of water. Andreas, who has curly dark hair and a trimmed beard, grew up nearby in what was communist East Germany. He was just 12 years old when the Berlin Wall came down in 1989 and the division of Germany came to an end.
We can see on the left side there's the former Western Germany, and on the east side there is the former German Democratic Republic.
You grew up not far from the Harz Mountains, so you know this region very well. Yeah. What did it look like in your childhood?
There were dark green forests, a little bit like in a fairy tale. In German it's a very famous fairy tale, Hansel and Gretel. These are very dark, dense forests. I like that, yes, and I know that from my childhood. And now they are completely new views.
It's just row upon row of dead trees. This is quite shocking, really.
Yes, it's quite shocking for me too. We have to learn to deal with it, yes. We have to learn and we have to deal with it, and we need some time to understand that it's the normal way now.
It's not a very pleasant view, and it's going to take years to replant and reforest and for this whole area to become green again. Yeah,
30 years. We think 30 years. And after that, it takes a long time that the trees are really big, yes?
Yes, until they've really grown.
They need 50 years, 60 years, 70 years to be a really big and nice tree. So it's a work for 2 generations or 3 generations.
Yeah. Well, the sun's come out now. It's late morning on Sunday, and I'm on one of the main paths going up this hillside, and there are quite a few hikers around. So what do they think about what they're seeing, the dead trees all around them?
It's catastrophal.
A catastrophe, you say?
Catastrophe, yeah. It's very sad.
Are you from this area?
No, I'm from Berlin.
Are you shocked to see it?
I knew it before, but I haven't seen it so close, so I'm shocked, yes.
Would it put you off coming again?
When we walked up, we just said, never again Harz. Just 5 minutes ago, I said, oh, it's so sad. I never have, finished a stay of 2 days with this conclusion, never again this region.
It looks terrible.
Were you surprised?
Yeah, because of the dimension, yeah. We visit the Harz every year.
Do you think it's getting worse?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Worse and worse. Yeah, it makes a little bit angry.
Hello. Are you from this area or are you visitors?
No.
Visitors.
What do you think about what you're seeing?
We're actually really surprised. We're thinking about what will happen the next few years to rebuild up this beautiful area and what can we do?
Did you know it would
Actually,
be bad?
No. We've heard about, of course, so we are from Hamburg, but we didn't expect it. It's sad to see.
Not the German forest you would expect.
No.
Everyone I spoke to expressed their shock and dismay. Andreas Mehling is now well used to this, but he tries to be positive about the situation. What do the guests say to you when they come down from the mountains, having been out on a day trip?
They ask me, what can I do? Can I help? We give information and we like to invite our guests to do something. I'm confident because I think that tourism can be a part of the solution.
What can the guests do?
They can plant trees, yeah. There are some projects each year, 10 times, 12 times, big programs to plant trees. And of course they can give money, and this money will be used to the reforestation.
We've actually stopped further down the mountain at the side of the road, where the dead trees have been completely cleared. It's an area of forest, if you can still call it that, owned by the town of Wernigerode, and it will be replanted. There are tree stumps as far as I can see, and it looks just as horrific as the national park on the other side of the road, where their policy is to leave the dead trees standing.
Hallo, Peter Gaffert. Hallo. Hatten Sie eine gute Reise?
Ja, sehr gut, danke. Down in the picturesque town square of Wernigerode, I meet up with Peter Gaffert. Until last summer, he was mayor here, and before that he was a forester, including being director of the national park in the Harz Mountains. He tells me how deeply affected he is by the death of so many trees in the area, and explains why he didn't go with us. We speak in a mixture of English and German.
I gone in the last years not in the wood.
Oh, you don't go there?
I could not see the situation. Could not look there and kamen die Tränen.
It makes you cry, you're saying?
Yes, was not so good. Wollte das nicht sehen.
You don't want to see it? The situation here in the Harz Mountains is particularly bad because of the tradition of planting Germany's most common tree, the spruce. It's not native and it needs a cold, wet climate to thrive, but it is very good as timber for construction. It's often grown in a so-called monoculture, which means just the one species, and this has made it vulnerable to the bark beetle, which has swept through plantations during hot, dry summers, particularly since 2018. This is widely considered to be as a result of climate change, but the decision to cultivate spruce forests goes back a long way in the Harz, as Peter Gaffert explains in German.
Die Fichte ist hier die traditionelle Baumart gewesen, etwa seit 300 Jahren.
Spruce has been the traditional tree species in this area for 300 years, planted en masse as a single species in monoculture forests. This was because of mining that took place in the Harz in the 16th, 17th and 1800s. The forests were all completely felled and they had to replant again quickly.
Was it wrong to plant the spruces here?
Zur damaligen Zeit sicherlich nicht.
It certainly wasn't wrong at the time. You can see that in this city. There was an enormous need for wood. It grows fast and can be used for timber for houses. I think the mistake was at the beginning of the 20th century when people slowly realized that monoculture forests weren't good. But even so, up until the middle of the 20th century, and in some cases until the end of the 20th century, spruce continued to be planted in monoculture forests.
Peter tells me that 20,000 hectares of spruce trees have been lost in this area in the past 5 years. The town of Wernigerode owns 2,000 hectares of forest, and half of that has died. They're planting new trees, different species to make up mixed forests, which they hope will be more resilient.
You can think 1 hectare, I think, costs 10,000 euro. The city of Wernigerode must replant 1,000 hectares.
So where's the money going to come from?
In the next years. The money comes from the state. Yes,
from the government?
Also, yes, also from the Bundesrepublik, especially also from companies, yes, sorry. and a lot of people gave money to buy a tree and plant it.
The mountains and forests are key to the tourism industry in Wernigerode. Christiana Oldendorf is the town guide. Dressed in a bright pink coat and carrying a large umbrella, she gives me a tour. We start at the fountain in front of the town hall. Just tell me about this square. There are beautiful timber frame buildings. How old is it?
It's the historic market square of Wernigerode. It always was, since the 12th century, but we had a lot of city fires, and that means we always had to rebuild many, many buildings. So here we have the town hall from the middle of the 15th century. But we also have...
No one can deny, though, that however stunning the historic town of Wernigerode may be, just up the nearby mountains, there's devastation.
People who have a hotel or something, of course they are afraid people wouldn't come anymore. And they don't want to lose their businesses, and they are afraid that Wernigerode won't be an attractive tourist destination anymore.
Christiana, like Andreas, is determined to emphasise what's being done and to focus on the future.
Sometimes it makes me sad when maybe an old man is coming and now he wanted to see the Harz Mountains maybe for the last time, and then he is disappointed because there's no more woods as he knew them. You know, you try to explain and to describe maybe a future idea, and sometimes it helps.
And the future idea is that there will be mixed forest.
Mixed forest, right, mixed forest, a lot of beeches, because that's what's native here. The spruces need another altitude. It's not the right spot where they try to grow them, so that's why it doesn't work out.
There's deep public concern and debate about the health of Germany's forests, and it's being played out all over the country. You don't just find forests in Germany's countryside and up in the mountains. I'm now in central Berlin, and I'm just getting on the train to Grunewald, Greenwood, on the outskirts of the city. I'm actually on my way to meet Dr. Nicole Wellbrock of the Thunen Institute for Forest Ecosystems. She's responsible for compiling data on the condition of Germany's trees for an annual report published by the Ministry of Food and Agriculture. There are some walkers coming past us with their sticks. Just had a cyclist, and there's a horse at the end of this track. Yeah. So this really is a forest for everyone.
Yes, it is. Really, I like it because you meet every kind of people. All people from Berlin come here, meet here, and do what they want. Nordic walking.
Yes, they've got a stick in each hand, walking along quite purposefully. How would you describe this forest? What sort of a forest is it?
It's a mixed forest. We have oak trees, we have pine, we have some beech, acer.
And what sort of condition would you say this forest is in at the moment?
Not really bad, but not good.
In the Berlin area, they've had an unusually wet winter. But Nicole, who has short blonde hair and is wearing a navy anorak and has a rucksack on her back, says because of recent drought years, there's still a shortage of stored water below ground, and another warm, dry summer would be problematic for the trees. This forest looks nothing like the dead spruce I saw in the Harz Mountains. Here, the trees are in leaf. But from mid-June to mid-August, the health of Germany's trees will be assessed nationwide, from loss of foliage at the wrong time of year to having died altogether. A lack of leaves means the tree is less able to create the nutrients it needs for growth.
Look at the crown, the upper crown. We have a tree with a lot of lost needles, and you can really look through the tree and see the sky. And the crown is not very dense.
And
it's not green, really green.
So that is a sign of a sick tree?
Yes, yes it is.
What did you find in your latest report?
4 out of 5 trees are in bad condition. but that means that 44% are in condition like warning. Warning means that you see some damage, but it can change to good or to bad. But 35% are really serious defoliation, and they're really in a bad condition. Only 20% are in good condition.
So which trees are worst affected by drought?
The spruce is really dying, especially in the lowlands. It's large areas are dying. There are some areas where also beech are dying, but it's suffering. Also oak is suffering. There's no really tree species which we can say it's well growing.
The problems for Germany's forests started back in the 1980s, when acid rain, contaminated with pollution from cars and factories, caused trees to die. It also prompted a huge environmental awareness in Germany. Conditions improve with regulation, but Nicole says some pollutants still remain in the soil, and now there's the problem of drought.
First we have in the 80s this acid rain. In 2017 we have large storms. Then we had a lot of dead trees lying down. The bark beetle really like these dead trees. Then we have drought. Normally the spruce produce resin to enclose the bark beetles, but if it's too dry, they are not able to do so. So the bark beetles can easily attack the trees.
So are we talking about climate change here?
Yes, of course. The number of drought years is increasing. Over the last decades we are seeing that. It's a serious problem. Even if we have one rainy year, it will not help.
I've travelled west and I'm now south of Bonn on the road to the Eiffel Forest. And all around me are different types of trees. I'm beginning to recognise a few different species. Thank you. I've arrived in the village of Vershofen, home to the Forest Academy, run by the forester and best-selling writer of books about trees, Peter Wohlleben. Extremely tall with a greying beard and glasses, he's become a bit of a celebrity in the world of trees, although he's also a polarising figure in the debate about Germany's forests.
Yeah, in reality, I'm an environmentalist. Tree shepherd, yeah, something like this.
And how many books have you written altogether?
In the moment, I am writing on my 30th book.
30th?
30th, yeah.
And The Hidden Life of Trees was the bestseller?
It was the bestseller, but the publisher here in Germany first printed just 3,000 copies because that was what they expected could be sold.
And how many were sold?
I think in Germany alone 1.3 million so far.
We're walking out of the village to a forest owned by the local community and managed by Peter Wohlleben Academy, which runs courses for the general public about trees. The way he writes and talks about trees, though, is rather unusual.
We are working through families, for example. Here you're walking through a little tree kindergarten. This one here.
A tree kindergarten?
A tree kindergarten, yeah. Mother tree is an old technical term in German forestry. In science, we know that mother trees, for example, can detect through their roots what the neighboring tree is about. Is it an oak? Okay, that's not my family. Is it a different beech, which is not my family? Or are, for example, the seedlings are my own?
And when you write about this, it does sound as if the trees are people, they're a family. Do you do that because that's what you really believe, or that's what you want the general public to think? You want them to think about the forests as communities almost like them?
Yeah, no, that's reality. The only difference between science and what I'm writing is I make it more popular in a more easy language.
Peter Wohlleben is very vocal in the current debate about what should be done to protect Germany's forests. He blames the dying trees on commercialised forestry and the timber industry, and advocates the return to natural forests which are allowed to reseed themselves. He's against managed replanting programmes. Your latest book, The Power of Trees, is very, very critical of forestry and the way forests have been managed up until now. Do you want to end the timber industry in Germany?
No, I don't want to end the timber industry, but I want to end the forest business as it is made today. Because we are losing every year 1,500 square kilometers. And why? Because of planting non-native trees, of making plantations. It's like battery farming. For example, when you drive with big machines in the forest, you destroy the ability to store water down to 5%, around about that. That means that in hot, dry summer, the trees haven't any spare water in the forest floor. And then even beech trees die. And then those foresters say, look at the beech trees. Even native trees die. That's not our fault. That's climate change.
Well, surely they've got to replant these forests.
No, that's the biggest mistake ever. You can't plant a forest. You can just make a plantation. If you plant trees, whatsoever trees, you can't plant their ecosystem, the bacteria species, the fungi species.
So your answer is?
My answer is let do nature the job. Trees are able to repair forest ecosystems since 300 million years. And we see it when you look at these older damaged areas, the natural forests come back first with birch, with aspen, with willow, and then other species like beech and oak and ash and so on. But forest industry don't like it. They want to have conifers in between, so they cut them down, replace them, and so on. So, but if you look at those older forest stands, you see it is possible that nature repairs it itself. And those trees are much more resilient to climate change.
I mean, do you not want them to use wood at all for building?
Of course, but less. Because if you thin a forest too heavily, it will die.
People in Germany really do care about the forest. It covers 1/3 of the country, and even though half is privately owned, everyone has the right to walk there. It's long played a role in German culture. It's the setting for the fairy tales of the Brothers Grimm and for poems by Goethe and many others who followed him. But however romantic the idea of Germany's forest might be, it's also a commercial source of timber, and last year around 100 million trees were felled.
It's the best conference room here.
Oh, lovely. Fantastic view.
You can
I've come to meet Christian Meyer, Deputy Manager of the Timber Division of RWZ, an agricultural products group, and we're looking out at Cologne Cathedral. Christian Meyer believes it's important for the industry that the proportion of softwood trees, which includes spruce, and many of which are being replaced with other species, doesn't fall below 50%.
Ja, die Lösungen sind natürlich klar. Erstmal die Lösungen.
The solutions are of course clear. First of all, to restock the devastated forests. That means reforestation with mixed forests and a high proportion of coniferous trees, which in our view is the answer. To produce wood for the next generation that can be used relatively quickly and can supply the timber industry.
But what do you say to the people like Peter Wohlleben who say, no, we shouldn't do that. There shouldn't be a timber industry as it is today. It should be much smaller.
Dann muss allerdings dann ein Herr Wohlleben mir dann auch mal erklären, wo das...
Mr. Wohlleben has to explain where he thinks the timber and wood products will come from, if not from German production. And I don't know where the tables, the roof trusses, pallets, where all this wood is supposed to be produced. I think it would be a shame if sites are taken out of production in Germany and the forest is just left to its own devices. But it's really a socio-political question which I can't answer.
So you're saying it's a question for society, but society seems quite split about this.
Ja, ich habe ein bisschen Sorge.
Yes, I'm a bit worried about political opinions on this. In my view, there's a very strong conflict in Germany between the urban population and the rural population, and many discussions over climate are driven from the urban point of view. Personally, I don't see a problem in combining nature conservation with the production of timber.
That's also the view of the SDW, the German Forest Protection Association. Jonas Brandl is Forest Policy Advisor there. Are you on the side of the nature conservationists who'd like to keep the forest as it is, or are you on the side of forestry who would still like to see managed and cultivated forests?
I would say we sit directly in the middle of the debate. So most of the forests we like to see being managed, but in a very sustainable way. The thing with climate change is, first of all, it's human-made, so it's going on very fast. And the trees haven't learned in their evolution to adapt that fast. So through planting, you can bring in another tree species that will diversify your forest and will make it stronger to get on with climate change and to adapt to it.
The German government is giving forest owners €900 million for replanting and also for setting aside a portion of their cultivated forest. But what does Jonas Brandl think about the accusation that forestry is itself to blame for the current situation?
We need to go back to the time after the Second World War, and we needed timber to build. That was the reason why so many spruce was planted. And then you can't just go on and say we blame everyone. Right now we see it's not something made for climate change, but no one knew about it. But definitely we need to say that we need to manage our forests in a more diverse way.
Let's return now to Wernigerode, where this programme started. One of the attractions is the narrow-gauge steam railway, which takes visitors up into the mountains. A final question for Andreas Mehling, who's head of the tourist office there. You can't exactly advertise your dead forests, can you? You can't say, come to Wernigerode, come to the Harz Mountains to see the dead spruce trees.
Perhaps I have to do that because we will see these dead trees the next years. 10 years, 12 years, 15 years. I have to explain it. And perhaps it's a very special attraction, yes? You can see climate change. And you can do something against climate change. So come to the Harz Mountain and have a look to that. And perhaps you can learn something for yourselves and you can do at home something better.
One thing is certain. Whoever's right in this debate about whether to manage and replant or leave the forest to recover by itself, the emergence of new forests in Germany will take generations. Assignment was presented and produced by me, Caroline Bailey. The editor was Penny Murphy, and the programme was mixed by Rod Farker.